It is Photography Bonsai. Today I'm taking a look at the Canon EF-M 22mm f2 lens versus the Viltrox 23mm f1.4 lens for the EF-M system. Physical properties of the lenses: both have a metallic exterior and mount. They have smooth, machined focus rings. The Viltrox lens is significantly taller than the Canon lens, 60.9mm versus 65mm in diameter. Weight is 270 grams for the Viltrox and 105 grams for the Canon. Filter size for the Canon is 43mm and the Viltrox is 52mm. The Canon lens is an inner barrel that extends while focusing. However, the Viltrox lens is all internalized, so when you focus, nothing changes on the exterior of the lens. There is an aperture ring on the Viltrox lens. It is not mechanical, it's all electronic, but you can go through the range of apertures in a manual setting. There are no clicks to the aperture ring, it's all smooth. So it might be pretty interesting to use in video, but depends on application, depends on your use cases. With firmware updates, the Viltrox lens has a built-in micro USB port to update firmware. There have been quite a few updates with these lenses. I'm currently using 1.1.0 on that lens for this video. Canon lens, there has never been an update for that lens, but it is possible to update the firmware through the camera for the lenses. Let's go over some of the important specifications for the Canon lens. The aperture range of f2 to f22. No physical aperture ring. You have the minimum focusing distance of 0.49 foot or 0.15 meters. There is no hood included with the Canon lens. With the Viltrox lens, you have an aperture range of f1.4 to f16. It does have the physical aperture ring. Minimum focus distance is 0.9 foot or 0.3 meters. Here's a quick focus breathing test on the two different lenses. You can see they're not too bad, either of them. I do think that the Viltrox lens is a little bit less focus breathing than the Canon. There is a visible difference with aperture and focal length between these two different lenses. f1.4 versus f2 will be a thinner depth of field. You get more ability to adjust your shutter speed or something in compensation with that larger aperture. Also, the focal length actually does make a difference with these lenses. You've got the 22 versus 23mm. You can see that difference. Clearly, the size is very different between these two lenses. You got a tiny little lens versus a large, substantial lens, at least on the EF-M system. And the Viltrox lens does come with that hood, so you can potentially get some benefit from that. Of course, you can buy a hood for the Canon lens, but that will screw into the filter thread, which is connected to the focusing system with the inner barrel. I have done various tests on these different lenses to see the differences between them in image quality. I'm going to go over that. Just keep in mind different focal length. I didn't shift the camera for the Viltrox, though they're at the same position. You will see differences in the images. Starting off with image detail, even though the Canon is 22mm versus 23, zooming in, you can see that it does have generally more detail to the image than the Viltrox lens, given the same aperture. However, if you go all the way up to f8, I think they're very similar in image quality. The main difference in image quality with these lenses, I do think, is a mixture of vignetting and also chromatic aberrations. The Canon lens does have quite a bit of vignetting in its corners. Based on throughout the aperture range, it's there and visible. With the Viltrox lens, it has the chromatic aberrations, so when you look, at least in the studio test, you can see these black characters on a white background, definitely some fringing on the corners, that red glow to it. With my portrait example, I think they're very similar. With this focal length, I don't think it's perfect for this type of photography, but if you do want to do people photography with the 35mm equivalent focal length, you can see what the differences are here with the two different lenses. One thing I did notice with the chromatic aberrations on the Viltrox lens is that in the hair area you can see some color variation. With my outdoor samples, I do think that the Canon lens is a little bit better here in general. The corners have more detail to them, but there is more vignetting, so you have to decide which one you want. But once you get up to f8, I do think the Viltrox lens is a little bit better with detail and vignetting. I did various video tests with these two different lenses onto M50 cameras. 1080p 60 frames a second, mostly at 5.6, 1/125th of a second, ISO 100. And then I took it down to f2, 1/1000th of a second to deal with the bright conditions, ISO 100. Not really any differences there. They both looked fine, looked good, no issues with focusing. Then I did f1.4, 1/1000th of a second, so you can see the difference in exposure, that benefit of the larger aperture compared to f2 on the Canon lens. Of course, it's overexposed, but that's the point, so you can see the difference. And then I changed the shutter speed to 1/2000th of a second, f1.4 for the Viltrox, so you can see with a similar exposure on the two what benefit you get from the larger aperture. When you combine that with the different focal length, there is a visible difference between the two different lenses. Did 4K as well. Quick test, f2, 1/1250th of a second, ISO 100. See if there's any differences there. I wouldn't generally use 4K on the M50, but wanted to put it in there anyways. I also did one quick 1080p 30 frames a second test, f8, 1/60th of a second, which is double the frame rate. That's a general guideline there, and ISO 100. Looks fine, no issues. The main difference here with video on these two different lenses, we've got a Canon lens on a Canon camera. Automatic video works fine, no issues with the exposure, but you can see with the Viltrox lens there are some quirks there, even though they have been improving this with firmware. Still some random or occasional flashes or adjustments that aren't smooth. If you're going to try to use that, you probably want to go with a Canon lens, because at least with the Sigma 56mm that I've used as well, that wasn't good either with automatic video mode. I use this focal length a lot for video work, sitting down, talking to the camera. I tend to use the Canon lens just for convenience. It's a little bit lighter weight and my specific setup is on a magic arm. I do think the Viltrox lens can potentially have an edge here if you don't consider the minimum focus distance. If you're trying to show products to the camera or something, the Canon does have a closer focusing distance, but if you don't really need that use case as much, I do think the Viltrox lens has a lot of benefits for video using manual settings. Of course, not the automatic video mode, but with the manual settings, you get the larger maximum aperture, which is nice, the focal length difference, which kind of comes a little bit closer to you. And I do think the Viltrox lens has a little bit less focus breathing as far as I can tell, which is a nice benefit for video. Now the question is, which lens is better? I think it really depends on the situation, in my opinion at least. With the 22mm, you've got nice corner sharpness, corner quality on there throughout the range, but the corners are darker. It has more vignetting as far as I can tell than the Viltrox. If I were doing outdoor nature photography, I'd probably go with the 22mm lens because of the corner sharpness, that image quality in the corners. Vignetting can be controlled and dealt with pretty easily in software. With the Viltrox, I think portraiture, if you are into using this focal length for that stuff, which in my opinion is not the best fit for that type, but works well. Doing this type of video work, I'm using my 32mm Canon lens at the moment, but I would tend to use these two instead. Either one would probably be pretty nice for videography type things, but keep in mind automatic video modes are bad on the third-party lenses. I haven't seen one that's good. Both nice lenses. Consideration with price and such, the Viltrox is a little bit more expensive at the moment than the Canon. That will vary potentially, but in general you're getting the larger aperture, getting slightly different focal length, and besides that, nice lenses. I like them both. And you can decide for yourself which one might fit best for you. Anyways, I'm Scott Photography Bonsai. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks.